Hi, my name is Michelle Fondin, and I'm the author of Help, I Think My Loved One is an Alcoholic, a survival guide for lovers, family, and friends. And welcome to my video forum. We are doing a step study, woohoo, on the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, this step study can be for you if you're a recovering alcoholic, and it can be for you if you're recovering from being in a relationship with an alcoholic, meaning that you're a family or friend of an alcoholic loved one in recovery, or if you're just curious about what are these 12 steps. So we're going to do the video forum with the step-by-step. Of course, this is my interpretation. This is something you might hear if you were in an Al-Anon meeting or an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. Again, this is not the only way to interpret the steps. It is my way from my interpretation of the steps. It can be interesting to just listen to and then study it yourself. The steps have a lot of depth to them. It wouldn't seem like they do at first glance. You can read over the 12 steps in about 3 to 4 minutes max. If you read really fast, you can read over them much faster. You can say you're in recovery and go through the 12 steps in like 12 weeks, but really to get the depth and the layers of the steps, it usually takes a lot longer than that, and it takes a lot longer to really uncover within you how those steps resonate with you. This is about self-discovery. It's about self-improvement. It's about looking at your life from a very different perspective in order to help yourself heal from this crazy disease called alcoholism. And you can apply this as well because these 12 steps are prevalent in many addiction and 12-step groups. So if you're a drug addict, same steps. If you're an overeater, same steps. If you're a shopaholic, same steps. You just replace the word alcohol with A, B, or C product, whatever it happens to be. So really, step 1 is the most important step of all the steps. It's like the mother of all steps, meaning that I once heard in an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, someone who had a lot of experience in alcoholism and in recovery, and who said, if you don't get step 1 perfectly, you will not recover completely. You have to get step 1 completely. You have to get it completely. You have to not only understand it from a hearing perspective, meaning like you hear the words and you get it and it goes up to your brain and it translates into the words that you know and the meanings of those words that you know, and then you get it intellectually, but you need to get step 1 emotionally, and you need to get step 1 spiritually. That is the most important thing here. Most people in early recovery, they're so emotional. They've reached a point where they can't take it anymore. They really have. They've reached this point, whether you're someone who loves an alcoholic or whether you're an alcoholic who has reached the point of no return. Meaning like you've either hit rock bottom or someone has forced you into a program through getting a DUI, it was the judge that told you you had to go, or a family member gave you an ultimatum. Most people in early recovery, their minds are not completely there, meaning they're just in another place. They're kind of like, did you ever see those cartoons where, you know, I'm thinking of, I can't even think, the cat chasing that bird or whatever, Sylvester maybe? But there was a lot of imagery where, you know, they'd like run into a wall and they'd fall over and they'd be like the stars that are going around their heads around and around and around to show that they were kind of knocked out by running into the wall. And so for people in early recovery, whatever side you happen to be on, that's often what's happening. It's like you ran into the wall and now there's these little stars going over your head, and you know, it's kind of like, woo, like I don't really know where I am. I'm kind of disoriented. They're telling me to say these 12 steps. Like, I don't know what this is. This makes no sense to me at all. And that's the way people are usually presented with step one. And so you can see that for the first time you hear step one, that's usually what's going on. You're like, oh, I don't really know what's happening. Okay, I'll say these words. I don't know what they are. So step one is we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and our lives had become unmanageable. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol and our lives had become unmanageable. Now let's first discuss the word we, because when I first started reading the steps, I was like, we? I'm like, that sounds so ridiculous. Like the royal we, like we the people, we the king and queen, we admitted. There are a couple spins on this. So one is that power of the group, the power of the group in the rooms. So whether it's Al-Anon or AA or NA, the power of the group in the rooms is the we. It's the we in the rooms. And then it's also the we in the past, meaning that we as recovering alcoholics throughout the years since the beginning of the inception of Alcoholics Anonymous, or we in the rooms and we from the beginning of the inception of Al-Anon or NA, whatever. We as a group, we have understood this principle. We together, us, the collectivity, because the 12 steps were created out of collectivity. So it was the power of the collective group, which can be extremely powerful. It's saying I'm not alone. Alcoholism is a lonely, lonely, lonely disease. I mean, where you feel isolated and alone and I'm the only one and no one understands me and I feel awful. It's a very self-centered disease. So for the alcoholic, it's a really self-centered disease, but it's also kind of a self-centered disease for the person who loves the alcoholic, because they're like, what the hell is going on? Like, this person's like out of control and they're treating me this way and I'm suffering the consequences of this. So it's a really self-centered disease. The we is kind of bringing the self-centeredness away, and it's kind of like collectively, like we as a collective party of this disease of alcoholism, we're all together in this. Do you get it? Now you can always replace the we with I. So if it needs to become personal for you, if the steps are just too far removed by changing the pronoun, by saying we, then change it to I. I mean, I admit I am powerless over alcohol. My life has become unmanageable. So, or I admitted. You can change it to the present tense. You can put it in the past tense. It doesn't matter. The principle is exactly the same. So that's the we. Now let's look at the word to admit. We admitted, to admit. So there are a couple of definitions of the word to admit. And the first one is to confess to be true. To confess that something is true. And it's usually with reluctance. To confess something to be true, usually with reluctance. So we admitted, we're confessing this following statement to be true with a little hesitation. Like, this kind of sucks. Like, we came to this point. We don't really want to come to this point. We're not really sure we wanted to come to this point, but we have actually come to this point. So that's the admit. That's the admitted part of it. The second definition, which I really like, and that's the addition of the depth into the step. That's really the addition of this depth within the step. And it means to allow someone to enter a place. Allow someone to enter a place. So we admitted, I'm allowing this idea to enter into my place. Like, I'm allowing this idea of being powerless over alcohol to enter into here, to enter into my heart space, to enter into my spirit, to enter into my soul, to enter into me when previously I didn't want to. Like, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to think like, really? Alcohol? Are you joking me? That's just an object. That's just a thing. Like, how could I be powerless over that? It just doesn't make any sense. That's an inanimate object. So to admit is not only to bring to light, bring to truth something reluctantly, but it's also to let it in, let it inside. It's like, I admit, I let it inside. I let it inside that I'm powerless over alcohol. I brought it in, like, come on in to me to admit that now. So we admitted that we were powerless over alcohol. Now let's look at that. And really, I believe it should be in the present tense, but you know, I didn't write this. I wasn't there in 1935 when Alcoholics Anonymous started, I believe. Please correct me out there. You guys who read the big blue book, you guys know. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol. So you can replace that word alcohol if cocaine is your number one drug over cocaine, or your loved one's number one drug, if it's overeating, and if it's chocolate. We admitted we were powerless over chocolate. Okay? In this case, we're talking about alcoholism, okay? So for now, we're going to keep the word at alcohol. Powerless over alcohol. Let's look at powerless. Powerless. Powerless means that you don't have control. You don't. You really don't. Like, so much of this disease is about trying to control the drinking if you're the alcoholic, and it's about controlling the alcoholic's behavior if you're the loved one of the alcoholic. So much of this disease is about control. So, you know, the alcoholic, his whole life since the beginning of the drinking has been about, I can control this, I can get this, I can control this. I can wake up in the morning and only have a drink, and then I can wait till after work and I can only have 2 drinks, and I can manage that. I can control it. I can do it. And it's all about that. It's all about trying to control the drinking. And then it's about controlling other people and their perception of you. So it's all about, I didn't have a drink. I didn't have a drink today. I never drank. What are you talking about? You're the crazy one. You're the one who drinks. I don't drink. You know, so it's all about control, trying to control the alcohol, the power over the alcohol, and trying to control what other people think of you and what they're perceiving about you. Okay, so that's the alcoholism. On this side, people who love the alcoholic, they're blindsided. So they think like, all right, I'm the one in control here because I'm not drinking, I'm not getting wasted. So I'm going to try to control this person's drinking by throwing out the drinks, by not buying him alcohol, by not taking him to the bar, by not giving him money, by, you know, at the end of the night, if he's got a drink in his hand, I'm going to take it away, I'm going to pour it down the sink. So there's a lot of control and power that tries to go on in this whole disease globally, all around. So when you come to this point in step 1 where you admit that you're powerless over alcohol, and it's basically like, I surrender, I give up control, like I can't do this anymore. This is the white flag. This is like, woohoo, you know, waving that white flag and saying, I can't do this. Like, I can't control this anymore. This disease is so much stronger than the both of us or the 3 of us or however many people are in your life that are still drinking or in recovery. It's just like, I can't do this anymore. I'm totally powerless over alcohol. Now, the reason why this part of the step is so important for the person in recovery, until they realize that they really are powerless over alcohol, that meaning like as soon as they take the first sip, the first drink, as soon as they take that, they can't control themselves anymore. Like, they have no control over what's going to happen after that. So until they understand that, until they get it, not only intellectually, but in their heart and their soul, until they get that, they're not going to be able to maintain their recovery. And that's what that person meant when I was sitting in the rooms in AA, when he said, you got to get step 1 perfectly. You have to get it perfectly. Because if you're still entertaining the idea that you can drink successfully, you haven't gotten step 1. And the same thing for the Al-Anon or the person who loves an alcoholic. It's like, if you still think you can control his drinking by being pretty enough, by being handsome enough, by making enough money, you haven't gotten it. You haven't gotten step one. So that is what it means to really admit powerlessness. It's like, I can't do this. Like, I am not powerful enough. So the second half of the step is that our lives have become unmanageable. So unmanageable, what is unmanageable? Unmanageable just means that things are chaotic. They're completely out of control, crazy. So basically it's like, you know what, I admit I'm like powerless over this thing called alcohol. I admit it, I surrender, white flag, and my life is crap. I mean, and that really that's what step one is saying, if you were to say it in layman's terms or less formal terms. And it's just like, my life is chaos, man. Total chaos. Now, some alcoholics will say, my life isn't chaos. I've got a job, pay my bills, I have a house, I still have my family. My life's manageable. Well, that's not exactly truth. If you need to take care of everything just so you can go get a drink by 5 o'clock, and that you keep drinking until 9 o'clock, and then you put the kids to bed, that's not being manageable. That's not life that's manageable. That's being a slave to a substance. If you are someone who loves an alcoholic and you are checking his text messages or her text messages, or you're sneaking out late at night searching for this person at a bar or at somebody else's house, that's not manageable. It's not manageable. That's being a slave to something else. So unmanageable can take on a lot of different things. It doesn't mean that you're living in the streets and eating out of garbage cans. It doesn't mean that you don't take a shower every day. That's not what it means. It means that the alcohol and the alcoholic disease has become such an obsession that you're not focusing your life on things that matter. You're not focusing your life on things that need to be taken care of. If you're getting behind the wheel because you're too drunk to drive, but you need to go get the kids at school, that's not manageable. That's completely unmanageable. When I was in my interviews with recovering alcoholics, one of the recovering alcoholics said to me, he had a very high bottom, meaning that he was able to keep down a job. He was able to maintain a family. He was not only a breadwinner, but he was also the primary caregiver of his own children. And he said to me, you know, my life wasn't unmanageable, but it was unbearable. He said, I could not go on another day living like that. And so if you want to interchange the word unmanageable with unbearable, and that feels better for you, then go right ahead. Like, just use that word instead to really grasp the concept of step one in, I admit, I'm totally powerless over alcohol. And my life has become so unmanageable as a consequence of the obsession with the alcohol, with the alcoholic, whatever is making you choose the obsession versus life. And that's really the essence of step one, is understanding that, if I continue this way, things are not going to get better. And really grasping that, like understanding that, like taking it in and being like, that is what step one means. It means that it's not that I'm weak. Powerlessness, some people equate that to weakness. It's not weak. It's power to admit that you're weak. It's power to know what you can handle and what you can't handle. That is power. That's true power. So until you get step one, until you really embrace it from mind, body, soul, spirit, until you embrace step one, you're going to feel powerless. But as you begin to absorb step one, you regain your power. And that's totally, totally powerful. So thank you so much for listening to step 1. I enjoy your company. Thank you. I enjoy your comments. Please subscribe to my channel. Support me on Patreon. Buy a book. You know the drill. All the links are below. Wishing you the most beautiful day ever and keep on going. Stay in recovery.